My own mother abandoned me at the airport when I was just 15, all to enjoy a luxurious vacation with her new husband and his kids. You can figure it out, she shrugged. I did by calling my estranged father, who arrived in a private jet. When she got back, she found my room empty and an illegal notice waiting. Before I tell you what happened when my mother returned to find an empty room and a legal notice that would ruin her life, drop a comment below. What time is it where you are right now? I want to see who is awake with me. The 5 hours before we arrived at JFK Terminal 4 were not a family trip. They were an unpaid shift. While Ashley and Jacob complained about the legroom in the backseat of the Escalade, I was the one loading 6 suitcases into the trunk. While my mother, Michelle, checked her makeup in the vanity mirror, I was the one double-checking that everyone had their passports. It was not new. It was just Tuesday. In our household, there were 2 classes of citizens: the golden ones, who were meant to be admired, and the staff, who were meant to be invisible. I was staff. We arrived at the airport, and the performance began. Robert, my stepfather, tipped the curbside attendant $40 to take 3 bags, leaving me with the other 3. "Hurry up, Sage," he snapped, checking his gold watch. "We have access to the lounge, and I want a drink before we board." I struggled with the weight, dragging a suitcase that was heavier than I was, while Ashley walked ahead, scrolling on her phone, complaining that the airport air smelled like poor people. We got to the check-in counter. Robert handed over 5 passports. Michelle, Robert, Ashley, Jacob, and me. Or so I thought. The agent took them, typed for a moment, and then frowned. "I am sorry, sir," she said. "I only show 4 reservations for the Maldives flight." My stomach dropped. I looked at my mother. She did not look surprised. She looked annoyed. Like a director whose scene was being interrupted by a clumsy extra, she pulled me aside, her manicured nails digging into my arm. "Listen, Sage," she said, her voice dropping to that whisper she used when she wanted to be cruel without anyone hearing. We had to make a choice. First class was non-negotiable for Robert's image, and frankly, you just do not fit the vibe of this trip. You are moody. You are difficult. You ruin the aesthetic. The aesthetic, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. "Mom, I packed your bags. I organized the itinerary. I am 15. And you are old enough to learn independence," she countered, smoothing her silk blouse. "Consider this a lesson. While we are gone, maybe you can reflect on why you are so hard to be around." She reached into her purse and pulled out $400 in 20s. She shoved it into my hand. "Take a cab back to the city. Mrs. Gable next door has a key if you lost yours. We will see you in 2 weeks." She turned around and walked back to the counter. She took her boarding pass. She took Robert's arm. And she walked toward security without looking back once. Ashley turned around, though. She smirked and gave a little wave. I stood there in the middle of Terminal 4, $400 in my hand, surrounded by strangers rushing to places they were wanted. The noise of the airport faded into a dull roar. I looked at the money. It was not support. It was hush money. It was a severance package from my own childhood. I did not cry. Crying was what they expected. Crying was for people who still had hope that their tears might change something. I had clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. I walked to the nearest bathroom and locked myself in a stall. I sat on the closed lid and pulled my backpack onto my lap. I ripped the lining open. Hidden inside, wrapped in a plastic bag, was a birthday card. It was 8 years old. The edges were soft and worn. It was from my 7th birthday, the last time I saw my biological father, William. Michelle had told me he was a loser. A deadbeat who could not hold down a job and abandoned us because he did not want the responsibility. But he had slipped me this card before he left, whispering, "If you ever need me, really need me, call this number, no matter what she says." I looked at the number. It was faded, written in blue ink that had bled slightly over the years. I took a breath that rattled in my chest. I dialed. It rang once, twice, 3 times. I was about to hang up, convinced the number was dead, convinced Michelle was right, and I was truly alone. "This is William." The voice was deep, calm, and terrifyingly familiar. Dad, I whispered. It is Sage. There was a silence on the other end. A heavy, loaded silence. Sage, his voice cracked. Where are you? Are you okay? I am at JFK, I said, my voice steadying. Michelle left me. She went to the Maldives with Robert. She gave me $400 and told me to go home. Stay there, he said. The authority in his voice made me sit up straighter. Do not move. Do not leave the terminal. I am in Chicago, but I will be there in 2 hours. You cannot get here in 2 hours, I said. The flight is... I am not flying commercial, he interrupted. Stay at the gate. I am coming for you. He hung up. I stared at the phone. Not flying commercial? The father Michelle described could not afford a bus ticket, let alone a plane that did not fly on a schedule. 2 hours later, I was sitting near the window, watching the plane's taxi. A security guard approached me. Miss Sage, he asked. I tensed, ready to be kicked out for loitering. Please come with me. Your transport is arriving at the private terminal. He escorted me out of the main concourse, through a side door, and into a black SUV that drove us across the tarmac. We stopped in front of a sleek, silver Gulfstream jet that had just taxied to a halt. The stairs lowered. A man stepped out. He was wearing a suit that cost more than Robert's car. He looked older, tired, but his eyes were the same. He scanned the tarmac until he saw me. He did not wave. He ran. He grabbed me in a hug that knocked the wind out of me. He smelled like expensive cologne and safety. I have got you, he whispered into my hair. I have got you, Sage. We boarded the plane. Inside, it was like a living room. Leather seats, wood paneling. I sat down, overwhelmed. Dad, I asked, looking around. Michelle said you were broke. She said, you did not want me. He poured me a glass of sparkling water, his hand shaking slightly. Michelle lied, he said. Sage, I did not leave. I was erased. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a file. It was thick. The first page was a photocopy of a restraining order petition filed 8 years ago. Plaintiff, Michelle Davis. Defendant, William Thorne. Allegation: imminent threat of abduction and emotional instability. You were dangerous, I asked. I was convenient, William said, his voice devoid of warmth but full of a terrifying precision. I was building a company. I was working 18-hour days. She argued that my obsession with work was a form of mania. She told the judge I was unstable. She told them I had threatened to take you to Europe and never return. He took a sip of his water, his hand steady now. I did not even have a passport at the time, Sage. But she had a better lawyer. I turned the page. It was a log of address changes. Every time William's private investigators found a lead, Michelle had moved. From Chicago to Boston, Boston to Seattle, Seattle to New York. She kept moving, I whispered. That is why I never finished a school year. She always said it was for better opportunities. It was for erasure, William corrected. She changed your last name to hers legally when you were 9, exploiting a loophole in the custody order while I was fighting a jurisdiction battle in another state. By the time I found out, you were Sage Davis in the system, and Sage Thorne had ceased to exist. I spent millions of dollars chasing a ghost. I looked at the stack of returned letters. Return to sender. Addressee unknown. Dozens of them. Birthday cards, checks, letters begging for a phone call. She told me you forgot, I said, the words tasting like metal. She told me you started a new family and did not have room for the old one. She projected, William said. She was the one building a new family. She needed you to believe I was the villain, so you would be grateful for the scraps she gave you. If you knew I was out here, fighting for you, waiting for you, you would not have been her perfect, compliant victim. You would have been a flight risk. I closed the file. The vibration of the jet engines hummed through the soles of my shoes. I looked out the window at the clouds below. For years, I had believed I was unlovable. I had believed I was a burden that everyone eventually put down. But that was a lie manufactured by a woman who viewed affection as a zero-sum game. I did not feel sad anymore. Sadness implies a loss, and I had not lost my father. He had been stolen. What I felt was a cold, crystallizing rage. It settled in my chest, heavy and solid. She thinks we are in the Maldives, I said, turning back to him. She thinks I am in a cab, crying, going back to an empty house to wait for her permission to exist. William closed the file and locked it back in his briefcase. The click was loud in the quiet cabin. She made a tactical error, he said. She assumed you were weak because she raised you to be. She did not account for the fact that you share my DNA. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, announcing our descent into a private airfield just outside the city. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the skyline. We are not going to a hotel, William said, adjusting his cuffs. I have a forensic accounting team and a locksmith meeting us at the house in 40 minutes. We are going to conduct an inventory. I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. The girl who had carried the luggage at JFK was gone. The girl staring back looked like the daughter of a titan. Let's go home, Dad, I said. I have a key. The house was dark when we pulled into the driveway. It looked like a museum of a life I was not allowed to touch, pristine, expensive, and completely hollow. We did not knock. The locksmith William had hired stepped forward, a drill whining for 2 seconds before the lock clicked. He pushed the door open. The alarm started to beep, a shrill, panic-inducing rhythm, but William simply typed in a code the forensic team had already bypassed remotely. The silence that followed was heavy. Do not touch anything you do not have to, William said, his voice echoing in the foyer. This is a crime scene. I watched as 4 men in suits and latex gloves moved past us. They did not look like police. They looked like auditors. They carried scanners and bankers' boxes. They moved with a terrifying, silent efficiency. I walked up the stairs to my room. It felt smaller than I remembered. A twin bed, a single dresser, and bare walls, compared to Ashley's suite down the hall, which had a walk-in closet and a balcony. My room looked like a holding cell. I pulled my suitcase onto the bed and started packing. I did not take much. Just the things that were undeniably mine. My sketchbook, my worn-out sneakers, the few books I had bought with my own money. I left the clothes Michelle had bought me for photo ops. They felt like costumes now. Sage. William was standing in the doorway of the master bedroom. He looked pale. The team opened the safe. I walked into Michelle and Robert's room. The closet was open, revealing rows of designer bags and suits. In the center of the room, the lead accountant was organizing stacks of documents on the duvet, but William was holding a leather-bound book. A journal. He handed it to me. You need to read the entry from March 12th, the day you turned 10. I took the book. Michelle's handwriting was elegant, looping script. I found the date. She looks just like him now. It makes me sick. Every time she walks into the room, I see the peeling paint of that apartment on 4th Street. I see the struggle. I see the failure. Why can she not just disappear? She is a living ghost of a life I buried. Ashley and Jacob are my future. Sage is just the debt I cannot pay off. I closed the book. The air in the room felt thin. For years, I thought she hated me because I was messy, or loud, or awkward. I thought if I just behaved better, if I was quieter, she would love me. But it was not about what I did, it was about who I was. I was a mirror. She hated me because I reflected the one thing her money could not scrub away, her past. She did not abandon me because I did not fit the vibe. She abandoned me because she could not stand looking at her own history. Mr. Thorne? The accountant cleared his throat. He was holding a spreadsheet. We found the trust. I looked up. What trust? The educational trust William established for you when you were born, the accountant said. He deposited $2 million before the divorce finalized. It was meant to be untouchable until you were 21. He laid a bank statement on the bed. It was a list of withdrawals, hundreds of them. She gained power of attorney over the account by forging a guardianship order, the accountant explained, his finger tracing the lines. Look at the dates. May 14th, withdrawal, $85,000. Memo, educational expenses. May 15th, purchase of Porsche Cayenne. December 20th, withdrawal $40,000. Memo, medical needs. December 22nd. Purchase of Cartier diamond bracelet. The list went on. The Maldives trip, Robert's investments, the renovation of this very bedroom. She did not just want me gone, I said, my voice steady and cold. She was billing me for it. I looked at the room around me, the silk curtains, the high thread count sheets, the view of the skyline. None of it was Robert's money. None of it was Michelle's. I had paid for this house. I had paid for the clothes on their backs. I had paid for the first-class tickets that carried them away from me. I was not a burden. I was the financier. I looked at William. He was staring at the documents with a look of pure, nuclear rage. She stole everything, he said. No, I corrected him. I picked up the journal and the bank statements. She borrowed it. And now, I am calling in the loan. The 2 weeks passed, in a blur of billable hours and quiet victories. William did not just hire a lawyer. He hired a battalion. We spent days in conference rooms, dissecting the anatomy of my mother's greed. Every receipt was a bullet. Every forged signature was a landmine. We did not stay in the house, it was a crime scene, after all, but we monitored it. On the day they were scheduled to return, I was not afraid. Fear requires uncertainty, and I knew exactly what was going to happen. I sat in a car parked down the street, watching through tinted windows as the airport shuttle pulled into the driveway. They looked like a caricature of a happy family. Michelle was bronzed, wearing a white linen dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Robert was laughing, slapping Jacob on the back. Ashley was already texting, likely complaining about the jet lag. They dragged their luggage to the front door. I saw Michelle frown, checking her watch. She was expecting the door to be open. She was expecting me to be standing there, ready to unload the bags, and listen to her complain about the humidity in the Maldives. She keyed in the code. The door opened. They filed inside, bringing their noise and their entitlement with them. I could not hear them, but I knew the script by heart. Sage, get the bags. Sage, the house is freezing, turn up the heat. Sage, why is dinner not ready? Then, the silence. The realization that the echo in the foyer was a little too loud. I imagined them walking up the stairs. Michelle opening the door to my room, ready to scold me for being lazy. And finding nothing. No bed. No clothes. No trace that I had ever existed in her world. Just 4 walls, and the dust outlines of furniture she had not paid for. They would run downstairs then. Panic would be setting in, not because they missed me, but because they had lost their punching bag. They would head to the kitchen, the heart of the home, the place where they usually held court. And there, sitting in the center of the marble island, was the only thing I had left behind. A single, thick envelope. It was not a suicide note. It was not a tearful letter asking why. It was a thick packet of legal documents, embossed with the seal of the district attorney's office and Williams' legal firm. The document on top was not a lawsuit. It was a notification of a forensic asset freeze. It detailed, in cold, hard numbers, the theft of the trust fund. But the paragraph that would break Michelle was not about the money, it was about the house. Notice of seizure. This property was purchased and maintained using funds embezzled from the William Thorne Educational Trust. As these funds are considered proceeds of criminal activity, this property is hereby designated as evidence and subject to immediate asset forfeiture. You are trespassing on federal evidence. It explained the mechanism of their destruction perfectly. They had not just stolen money, they had lived inside the theft. Every brick, every beam, every silk curtain was bought with the future they stole from me. And because they had used illicit funds to pay the mortgage, the house did not belong to them. It belonged to the restitution fund. I watched from the car as the lights in the house flickered. I imagined Michelle reading the words. I imagined the blood draining from her tan face as she realized that the poverty years she tried so hard to escape had not just returned, they had come to collect interest. Suddenly, the front door flew open. Robert stumbled out, phone to his ear, looking frantic. He was calling his bankers. He was about to find out that his accounts were frozen, his credit cards were dead, and his investments were being dissected by the IRS. Michelle followed him out. She looked wild. She was screaming something at him, gesturing at the house, at the car, at the sky. She looked around the street, her eyes wide and terrified. She was looking for someone to blame. She was looking for me. But I was not there. I was a ghost, and ghosts do not carry luggage. "Let's go," I told the driver. As the car pulled away, I did not look back. I did not need to see the eviction. I had already seen the ledger. The debt was called in, the tenants were being removed, and the landlord was finally home. The final blow did not happen at the house. It happened at 9 in the morning the next day, in the one place Robert felt untouchable, his office. He assumed that even if his personal assets were frozen, his career was safe. He was a senior partner, he brought in revenue. He thought he could outrun the domestic disaster by burying himself in work. He was wrong. When he swiped his keycard at the elevator, it blinked red. Access denied. The security guard at the desk, a man Robert had ignored for 5 years, stepped forward. "Mr. Davis, you have been asked to report to the main conference room immediately. We have a visitor." Robert was escorted up. He walked into the boardroom, straightening his tie, preparing to charm or bully his way out of whatever glitch this was. At the head of the table sat the new majority shareholder of the parent company that had quietly acquired Robert's firm 3 days ago. The leather chair swiveled around. It was not a stranger. It was William. My father did not yell. He did not flip the table. He simply slid a single piece of paper across the mahogany surface. "Robert," he said, his voice calm and lethal. "We have been reviewing the firm's ethical compliance standards. It appears that financing your lifestyle with embezzled funds from a minor's trust violates, well, everything." Robert turned pale. He stammered something about misunderstandings and personal loans. "You are terminated for cause," William said. "Effective immediately. Your severance is 0. Your stock options are voided. And since you used company accounts to facilitate the transfers to the Maldives, legal counsel is currently drafting a referral to the SEC." In 10 minutes, Robert went from a wealthy executive to an unemployed suspect in a federal investigation. The ripple effect was immediate. Without Robert's income, and with the assets frozen, the tuition checks for Ashley and Jacob bounced. They were pulled out of their private universities before the semester ended. Michelle was not just facing eviction, she was facing indictment. The forensic audit provided the district attorney with everything they needed for a grand larceny charge. They did not just lose their money, they lost their audience. And for people like Michelle and Robert, that was a fate worse than poverty. I did not stay to watch the trial. I did not need to. I had already moved on. 3 months later, I was sitting in the sunroom of William's penthouse in Chicago. The view of Lake Michigan was endless. A sheet of blue glass that stretched into the horizon. The room smelled of turpentine and oil paint. For years, Michelle had banned me from painting. She said it was messy. She said it was a waste of time. She said artists were people who refused to grow up. Now, I had an easel set up in the corner. I was painting the skyline not as it was, but as I saw it. Sharp edges, bright, violent colors, the kind of art that takes up space. William walked in, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He set one down on the side table, careful not to disturb my brushes. He did not ask if I was productive. He did not critique the work. He just stood there for a moment, watching me exist. "It is good," he said. "It is loud," I replied, adding a streak of crimson to the canvas. "Good," he said. "Be loud." I looked at him. The man who had moved mountains to find me. The man who had systematically dismantled the people who hurt me, not because he enjoyed destruction, but because he loved creation. He had cleared the weeds so I could grow. I realized then that family is not about blood, or obligation, or who is in the holiday photo. Family is the people who refuse to leave you behind. Family is the people who see you standing at the gate with your luggage and say, "I am coming for you." I put down my brush. I was done with the past. The canvas was full. I learned that sometimes you have to let the old life burn to build a new one. If you have ever had to cut off toxic family to save yourself, hit that like button and share this story. Let us remind the world that we are not defined by the people who threw us away.